sort of, how to say, heart-to-heart level with them, probably because of the restrictive codified form.
And at the same time, as I was thinking about connecting deeply to my audiences, I was also being exposed to very many different art.
With the other extreme saying we have pure Bollywood, which is full bells and whistles Bollywood, which make the economics very tough with a non-diaspora audience. We have hundreds of other art forms in this country and versions and collaborations therein which would appeal to sensibilities universally. And that's, in a universal arts audience across the world. So there are touring routes that hit the local town halls and the basilicas and play through summer. If you do Europe or you do North America, you'll see all sorts of art forms touring. And there are routes that exist, and there are promoters that think tour promoters, and strangely they border between presenter and promoter, and they work with the town council and they work with a number of small organizations. If we start thinking that way, it's financially more viable. If we model it right, the viability rises significantly because we can have more reasonable artists. And I don't believe, and therefore we also reduce the dependence on the government, because then where the governments come in is actually logistical support. It may be some flights, maybe some visa support, permissions, visibility. Those are the places they come in which hurt the bottom line of smaller shows. And that is the sort of support that comes in. And I think there is an ecosystem out there. We as content creators, as promoters, have to change the way we look at it. I think that's something that if we embrace the way the world works a bit, remain Indian, but embrace the economics that exist, we can easily do it. And I actually spent a lot of time with Sanjoy, developing routes with some of the people I knew, but before that I got pulled into another project before I could see that. But that's my long-term game.
Dr. Goel, we'll go directly to you because I know you already had some to add to that. But also if you can lean on your experience to really say that it works. Because I know that you have enough experience that already proves it. How do you get the international audience to say Bharat Mata Ki Jai?
Thank you very much. I think you gave me my lead. It's not enough for us within India to scream and shout at every possible opportunity, Bharat Mata Ki Jai. We are patriotic Indians, nationalists, yes, we will say Bharat Mata Ki Jai, but do other people believe in it? Do they say the same thing, Bharat Mata Ki Jai? I think if we want, and it's the most important thing, we need others to say Bharat Mata Ki Jai, and to do that, we need to work out how can India, and now when I talk about India, I talk about India as a whole. Culture is one part of it. Culture defines us. Culture is the way we actually communicate, the way we talk. But how do we make that impact on thinking of others so that they can say Bharat Mata Ki Jai? To my mind, there are 3 or 4 components. I recall when, as a young diplomat, I was in Malaysia, and I was looking after the commercial work at that time. I went to the companies and I said, hey, why don't you buy this heavy machinery from India? And those Malaysian companies who were not even making them, they would turn to me that, does India make this machinery? They didn't believe it. They didn't know what India is. So we need to basically work out a way that without us telling the stories, they know what our story is. And that comes by experiencing. And that is where the event industry and the experiential come in a way. I'll give you a few examples. Experiencing. Today, I think our biggest strength really is, you talked about Indian diaspora, but our Indian professionals who are working abroad are our biggest strength. They take India abroad. And when they work with the Indian societies there, they don't need to say that I am India. Other people know they are India, like when you are in Paris, they know that you are India. So your story is much more credible to them than my going and saying that this is India. Because they see you every day, they experience you every day. I am just a visitor, number one. So the role played by the Indian diaspora, the Indian professionals is very, very important. But the important thing is that they should not be aloof from the community they live in. And that reminds me of your program, Rukmini, that you have done. I must tell you this thing, questionings. It was a beautiful production. She brought in Bharatnatyam as a way to answer, as a way of questioning what the Indian community is all about in the other countries. Do they believe that they actually belong to that country, or are they still being Indians at heart? They are away from the country. And the fierceness, the ferociousness of the response was represented by the Norwegian black metal. It was a beautiful thing, but you're actually saying that, look, I have been living with you for now 50, 60 years, and do you still want to question where I belong? I could be an Indian, but I belong here. Anyway, so that is what they ought to be. Number two, I think we need to give away our tendency of, I would call it's a very strong term, cultural imperialism. At every step of the way, you go anywhere and say, Indian culture is so and so. Indian culture is so and so. Bharatnatyam, the best possible dance in the world is Bharatnatyam. Nothing can be better than that. Hey, do you mean to say that the ballet they perform in France is no good? In Russia is no good? Are you saying that the flamenco is no good? They have their own dance forms. Let us respect other people's culture. When you begin to respect them, they will know that this is part of our culture and they will begin to respect us. Number three, I think we need to focus much more on, I will not even call it collaborative, we use the word dialogue. We need to really focus more on dialogue of cultures, dialogue of different art forms, to be able to say that this is what we believe in. Again, I will give you examples. Rahul, you were there at that time in 2012 when we had the ASEAN summit here in Delhi, and we had 10 groups coming from the ASEAN countries, all different groups. Our task was to match each of them with one Indian group and produce one common choreography, one common production. It was in Rashtrapati Bhavan. The production was 1 hour. The whole production had one group from India, one group from there, and it came so seamlessly well. Nobody could believe that these were ASEAN groups or these were Indian groups. They came in a totality. It was one common choreography where they all came together, they were talking to each other, and at the end of it, the presidents and the prime ministers who were there, they came to me and said that this is what we want India to do, because this is what shows that India and we have been together. I think that is where then they say that we believe in India. That is what India brand is. Our saying is not enough. I talked about your example. There have been many. There was one dancer who came to me and she brought beautifully together the tap, the jazz, the kathak and flamenco to the beat of the tabla and to the beat of flamenco. Later on, it became part of the archives in Copenhagen, Opera House. Now, when they want it, they are saying Bharat Mata Ki Jai. I think brand India is all about letting others believe in India, not our own belief in India, and that is what happens when we actually talk to them, enter into a dialogue.
Thank you, Dr. Goel. I think you well articulated what Rukmini was trying to express through her experience. Rukmini, if we can go back to you in terms of what Dr. Goel has said, is the acceptance you feel for Brand India a little heightened because of this? I think as Indians, we do have a nature of immersing in that collaboration. I'm using the word even though we're trying not to. But having said that, is that the advantage? And also if you can comment on the feasibility again on the economics. I know just as an artist, if nothing else, just so that we feel the confidence to really test and try our hands in such efforts.
Right. So I think I totally agree with Anuj and with Dr. Goel. They've been talking about the feasibility of things. I'll try and talk as an economist now. No, but what I mean is, exactly what Dr. Goel is saying is that the moment that these places, you can pitch something which resonates with them. For instance, I'll just take the example of what Dr. Goel was saying. I did a collaboration with a black metal group from Norway and brought in Indian arts, and I was questioning actually our world of today. And the reason that's why I chose to work with black metal. Now, this was what was pitched to the opera in Paris and the opera in Oslo. Black metal, as we all know, cannot even think of going, into an opera. And this is what happened. So it was, an Indian taking black metal to the opera in Oslo and to the opera in Paris, which is, it's not about me at all. It was just the fact, the way it was, pitched by the right person. And the audiences, it was amazing because, of course, opera audiences have nothing to do with black metal. The funny thing was these black metal artists were even scared to go into the opera. If you see the opera in Oslo, it's a white building. It's the opposite of black. It's, and it was really interesting seeing, these artists already going beyond their borders in their own culture and also taking Indian culture together with it into the opera, which is not very often anywhere in the world. The only reason being what we were talking about appealed to each and every person. And so the economics obviously becomes viable because we are talking about what they want. Yeah, and we're talking about something which is so universal that, when we did the same thing in Delhi, and it was really funny. We had sari-clad, ladies sitting in the front thinking they had come to see a Bharatanatyam and, Kathak performance, and in the back it was full of all these boys. Where there's God, there's no need for Satan, and where there's Satan, there's no need for God. And, and it was such a mix of things, which you usually don't. All I'm trying to say is that when you give people what they want, then the economics also becomes viable. The reason I'm just going to take one more minute. I was observing, the event managers in our country, the event management companies, and what, because, and I think Sanjay told me that I can mention that, is that I was one of the panelists on, sorry, not panelists, judges, I don't know. Yes, jury, thank you. And what came through to me the maximum was with wedding events. All over the world, in the most exotic of places, in the most beautiful of places, but it all seemed exactly the same. Going from Tajikistan to Venice to Bangkok, it looked exactly the same. When you, and I understand that that's what, the event managers will tell me that that's what the people buying that want. But what I would say is that why not offer them something which is also unique while doing that, which can take each of their events to something other than just, the same flowers, the same performers of pop music from the West and Bollywood from India, or, and offer it as a gift to the, to the client, and offer it as a gift to the newlyweds. We can absolutely talk of love and all of that, and entertainment, but we could also do it through Khalil Gibran to Rabindranath Tagore. So why not offer something which is, and take the local country in, into that equation? Because what I saw is that it could be in Tajikistan, but the people there were showing Cinderella. And it was very interesting. It was interesting. But what I mean, and I understand that the client wants that, but we could also, give them offers which were slightly different from, because the client doesn't know. So sort of also educate the clients on what all the different kinds of things that we can offer them. And then they choose what they want.
Lovely. Anuj, I know Rukmini has spoken again about social events and weddings where as she rightly said, it's a client-pleasing event, so you have to go by the brief, but there is an opportunity perhaps to push the envelope, at least to bring in the destination into that content. But I feel like in your work, where you are, it is your day in and day out job, if I could say, to put together the content that is viable. Do you feel, or would you agree that it is actually a necessity to go beyond the more commercial and popular realms? And if you can talk about how you're going about.
No, I'll give you one. I understand what you're saying, but I just, based on what you said, is I think one thing that she said is, it breaks down barriers and pushes people out of their safe zone. It's easy to say arts breaks barriers, sports break barriers, but pushing people out of their comfort zone is something that creates new art, and gets new audiences, and I think it's something we have to do. We have to get out of our comfort zone to some extent, and in doing that, you create a lot of interesting dynamics between cultures. And again, I go back to the structural aspect of it, where, you know, very often when you work in a collaboration of cultures, you can find solutions. And again, it comes into the economics of it work out when you change model from a I will do a gig perspective to I will do a tour perspective. And dance actually has, in the current day, Indian dance is doing a lot more of that. What Rukmini is doing, what Astad has done, what Aditi does every summer, taking the arts to the world and finding ways of making it work, usually without a sponsor, usually banking on ticket revenue. And actually going and performing on the road, there's no reason the other arts can't do it, but they've got to be open to working beyond the traditional agent and diaspora that we're working with. It's going beyond that. I'm not saying excluding them, but going to a different audience. And that is something that can change a lot. I mean, it can just change the way you work. So, and that's when you come to government support. There's a project that we were exploring with a foreign, with an international party, and it's an Indo-international piece, and the viability was just not working. And at that point, they went to that government there and said, this is where we want this to happen and you want this to happen, but it's not happening, and no one can take this level of burn, neither party. And the government stepped in saying, okay, our national airline will handle the flights and our cargo. We will help you by subsidizing, you know, all the international, in international markets, they're heavy unionized fees, so we'll subsidize the union outflow. And effectively, they brought the viability to something where everybody could deal with it. So I think it's A, work well in advance, B, work with a different contractual system where we work by week, not by show, and C is focus on ticket revenue, not on sponsorship revenue. If you step away from pure star power and focus on what is being made, maybe as a collaboration, giving it local context, you move away from the need for a A-list star. You move from A-list, you move to A-list content, not A-list star. That's
super. That's great advice. I think we'll stick to that theme for the next topic. Dr. Goel, I know you can don a second hat, I know, as because you're now in such close quarters with the event industry. So taking from what Anuj is saying, to move out of your comfort zone to be able to find a new solution. So essentially what we didn't know could be a solution has turned out to be a solution because we tried something new. What is your advice? Because you know how the event companies are working and what people are in business. So what is your advice to the industry?
I think we need to basically cross a boundary here. There is one level at which we do culture for the sake of culture. It is taken as either entertainment, sensory pleasure, and it's important. It's very, very important. The other is that this can be used to a very huge extent as a branding opportunity. Now, when we talk about branding opportunity, which I talked about earlier also, if we say that using Indian cultural forms, Indian arts, and when I say Indian arts and Indian culture, I'm not talking purely about classical art and culture. For me, the contemporary dance is as important, as good as the classical Bharatanatyam dance is. There is a lot of experimentation going on. For me, a folk dance form or Nagara that we saw yesterday was equally vibrant. And I think what we need to do is explore the ways that these can form part of a branding process for India. Now, what happens is that if we, at the moment, there is this kind of complete separation between the corporate world and the culture. You try and go to the big companies asking them to support any cultural event. And they said, what is in it for us? if you use the models which can say that all right, if you support so and so cultural event or cultural form, this is the kind of a tax benefit you get. CSR has become quite a buzzword these days, but a lot of CSR is going into either making toilets or creating tents, housing, etc. Why can't some percentage of it be given to the cultural activities as a way to encourage artists after they are as much a part of the society? Similarly, festivals that we do festivals can be a great branding opportunities for the Indian corporate. Now, you have a festival in France, Namaste India, or sorry, Bonjour India. When you have a Bonjour India, say in 20 different places in Paris, and each one place you have Tatas or you have any company, Mahindra and Mahindra coming up and splashing all around there about what they are doing. There is that immediate synergy between the festival and the brand. People believe in it, that they associate that this is from India and this is what they are doing. So I think a lot of what we do can be used for the branding opportunities. I saw a very interesting, I was in Johannesburg at that time, and Lakshmi Mittal was doing the launch of his new production facility there in near Johannesburg. He brought in the Indian team, developed a choreography on the basis of steel manufacturing. Used Indian dance form, but the theme was Indian steel manufacturing. You know, created fire, blah blah blah, and the iron ore coming. All this happened. Why can't we explore new themes, new ways to develop productions using the same step? For me, if you do Odissi, you can either do pure Odissi, you can do Tarans and everything. But for me, the important thing is pick up a contemporary theme and develop a production on the back. So I think that's a way people can be interested in seeing what you're doing and give it a more current.
That's a great opportunity because we're all familiar with the briefs from corporates where they're saying, let's do something that's never done before. So at least let's use this as an opportunity perhaps to do that, and then maybe we find a solution. I'll open it up to our audience. If there's any questions for the panelists, it's been our pleasure to discuss this, and it's been super insightful for me. But if anybody would like to address a question to the panelists before we wrap up the discussion. Anything, guys? Yeah.
So, sir, you had said about the diaspora being ambassadors. I've been born in Delhi, and my exposure to Indian culture has been pretty distant. So, in that sense, I'm sure most of us also share the same thing. What are we going to be ambassadors of if my exposure is only pretty dismal in that sense? Of course, I have joined an arts company and then my exposure increased. I started reading books and stuff. But our exposure and the whole scenario made out is that classical wo kya jana. But of course, there are very niche audiences. Speak Packet finds good audience. But there is nothing which would, maybe in other places in the world, you have your own sense of pride in your language, in your culture, which I don't see forthcoming out here. So I just wanted to open that up for your comments.
Rahul, I disagree with you there to some extent. I've seen the way cultural scene, so to say, is a rhetoric, change in at least Delhi. Bombay, I don't know, but I've lived in Delhi over a period of time. Having lived in Delhi, my exposure to culture came basically after I joined the service, 1970s onwards. I remember the times when Kamani Auditorium or Shri Ram, in fact, I remember that the Triveni used to have Tansan Festival, and Bismillah Khan would be sitting there playing on Shehnai from 7 p.m. onwards and would go until 12:30 in the night, 1 o'clock. And there were young people who were sitting there. But yes, not everybody is interested. But those who are interested, they are interested. Then came the kind of a feeling that, oh, Bollywood, this popular culture is going to bring the death of the Indian classical culture. That didn't happen. It survived, it thrived, it flourished. So I think we are far too pessimistic about where the Indian culture is going. I came back here in around 2006, and the whole place was full of Indian culture, really. Our problem, I find, really is कि हम लोग जो है ना वो कि जब माँ होती है कि बच्चे को कि खाना नहीं खा रहा है, ठूस ठूस करके खाना खिलाते हैं कि सीखो, भरतनाट्यम सीखो. अरे भाई, अगर उसकी इच्छा नहीं है सीखने की, क्यों फोर्स कर रहे हैं आप? आई वुड से कि आप अगर छाव करना चाहते हैं या मॉडर्न डांस सीखना चाहते हैं, ठीक है, करो. फॉर मी द मोर इम्पॉर्टेंट थिंग रियली इज नॉट जस्ट a manifestation of art, but to believe in being an Indian. And that's a value system. And I think that is where the culture comes from. Once you are part of the value system, once you believe in being an Indian and believing in those values as an Indian, I think we are there. Not everybody, I can't dance for the word of it. I have 2 left feet. But doesn't mean that I can't appreciate a good dance. I enjoy it. So I think we should know that. Second thing is that people who go from here, they are particularly, I find, once I believe, they become even more Indian than we here in India are. Because they need to preserve, they need to project that Indian identity. And I think at every step of the way, we can make out that they are thirsting for that Indian culture, really. In fact, my battle really is that the Indian cultural centers abroad, more often than not, the Indian diaspora think that it is an Indian diaspora center. We have to tell them that it is an Indian cultural center where they are welcome, but it's an Indian cultural center where they're supposed to interact with the whole society, to dialogue with them, to talk with them. So I don't think that, really speaking, in my experience, it is that visible. Yes, we need to make an effort, but it's happening.
I have Rahul. I know you're fortunate to be in an arts company in the traditional form of the arts, but I disagree with that each person is not exposed to the arts. I think we're a country full of color, and every generation is exposed to the arts. Today in Bombay, I know there's a big young rap scene, there's a big comedy scene. I think there are lots of indie bands coming up in the cities. There's a lot of stuff happening in the small towns, which is small independent theatre, local forms, completely new forms, which we might not consider Bharatnatyam and Drupad, but those are also the arts, and those are also part of our identity. And I don't see any reason we can't, when we talk about collaborating internationally, those aren't part of what we export.
Actually, I was kind of question where kind of an answer before. That's what I just wanted to know. Like Brand India is like what we traditionally kind of associate of Brand India would be the contemporized version also. So I think
I think Under 25 Summit, which happens in Bangalore, is a great place to go and look at where the country is today.
No. I just want to say, today, the Indian youth is the biggest part of Brand India. Everywhere, that's all.
I agree with both of you, and I also agree with you. So, the reason being, I think we can also have something about, sort of educating, which I think is hugely lacking. And what you said about, that you were not exposed to anything, classical or anything that was traditionally Indian.
Mother used to do, so I picked it up from there. I've attended concerts at of Speak Mappy at Purana Killa, which was a pretty lovely open darbar and stuff. It's quite lovely. But it was my peers and nobody even knew about it and nobody even cared about it.
Right.
The point was
what you were making. Exactly. Because I think we artists are very much responsible for what is happening with you. I think we are totally responsible because we are so complacent with ourselves that we do any rubbish and just think, just because we're moving our hands a little bit, everybody will be interested in seeing us. Why? I think that is something we also need to question. And I do see that very much in our country, that we're too complacent in a certain way and we just expect, people will be interested. No, I have to look for what you are interested in and go to you as an artist and bring that whole world to you, where you say, of course I'll go every day.
Just to add to what you're saying, I think, and to that extent, I believe that our focus as people of the arts community in the country has to focus on the future of we're not about creating museums for our art. Every art form keeps evolving. So we have to talk about the future. So maybe Bharatnatyam in its very presentation works with black metal and becomes relevant. So we have to look at the future. We're not a museum. We have to look at the future of the art form.
Exactly. Anything in a museographic sense is dead art. And we're talking of... we're talking about...
I wanted to give an example, Rahul. I have two not so young men. They are now 32 and 36. When I tell them that, okay, we are going to Kamani, or we want to go to, what is that auditorium? Stain. I see so-and-so dancer is performing. They say, do we have to? And when we tell them, we are going there, it's a dance drama, is basically dealing with this theme of family conflict or family issues, and so is using so dance forms to bring this to life. Sounds interesting. Changes.
It's how we tell the story. I mean, a similar thing with...
So that's what...
Stories
are not told earlier.
Exactly.
When I was getting educated, these things were not there. There was no stories. There was a simple Bharatanatyam dance where you sat as if you were in a prison. Your parents were interested, you watched it. Sorry to use...
No, absolutely.
And then you were just fidgeting and when would it end, and then when it ended you went home. So of course nowadays you have much exposure to everything with internet opening up. But what gets ingrained is typically between 13 to 20 or 13 to 19. In 90s, I'm sorry, nothing was available.
So just...
Nothing was available which was, of course Bollywood was, but in terms of art and stuff, yes, pickpacking was always there, ingrained. But beyond that, and that was just a season. And unfortunately, pickpacking always used to happen when you had your exam.
Rahul, I have a very favorite way of describing what you're saying. Knowing grammar is important. If you want to write any book, unless you are confident about your grammar and the words that you use, is very important. That is where the knowledge of the classical dance form comes. But if you keep on writing the same Ramayana today as you were writing 1,000 years ago, nobody is going to believe in you. You have to write about the modern themes now, and that is where now weaving the same words into the new.
And I think while I agree with you, I was a kid in the 90s too. It was tough to see the classical arts, but if you look at how we were actually being exposed to the arts, I think my dad used to listen to old Bollywood. All those songs were based on rags, were done by people who are very well versed in that. So we were being exposed to it. My little kids, who unfortunately have to listen to a very strange mix of music, there was Ed Sheeran's Shape of You when it came out. So they came across it in school. And on the internet, I played to them Indian Raga's version, which is just a vocal riffing in classical form. They listen to that more out of choice, okay, not because they've been exposed to the classical arts, but they're getting exposure to the arts. So if you start really looking at it, there are a million ways today. We used to be excited about a Western orchestra playing an Indian song or Bollywood song. It used to go viral in this country. But today there are more songs going viral among the youth when an Indian band takes a Western song and reinterprets it. So I think we're fortunate to be in an era where we can use the internet and introduce people to the arts in many forms. You have to be progressive about it.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you for that insightful discussion. I know we're only a few, but I think everyone's coming away with some interesting learnings. Thank you very much. I'll hand it back over to our host.